Hello, Mark. I'm Adam. My number is S0341008 and my level is junior. Today I will read P.J. Miller, What Really Matters at the End of Life, posted September 2015. Rated inspiring, beautiful. Well, we all need a reason to wake up. For me, it just took 11,000 votes. I know you are too polite to ask, so I will tell you. One night, sophomore year of college, just back from Thanksgiving holiday, a few of my friends and I were hosting around, and we decided to climb atop a park computer train. It was just sitting there, with the wires that run overhead. Somehow, that seemed like a great idea at that time. We just certainly done stupider things. I scurried up the ladder on the back, and when I stood up, the electrical current entered my arm, broke down and out my feet, and that was that. Will you believe that watch still works? Takes a licking. Louder. My father was it now in solidarity. The That night began my formal relationship with death, and it also began my long run as a patient. It's a good word. I mean one who suffers. So I guess we are all patients. Now the American healthcare system has more than its fair share of dysfunction. To manage its brilliance, to be sure, I am a physical now, a hospice and palliative medicine doctor, so I've been seeing care from both sides, and believe me, almost everyone who goes into healthcare really means well. I mean truly. But we who work in it are also underwriting agents from a system that too often does not serve. Why? Well, that's actually a pretty easy answer to that question, and explains a lot. Because healthcare was designed with disease, not people, and its center, which is to say, of course, it was badly designed. And now where are of the effects of bad design more heartbreaking, or the opportunity for good design more compelling than at the end of life, where things are so distilled and concentrated. There are no do-overs. My purpose today is to reach out across disciplines and invite design thinking into this big conversation. That is, to bring intention and creativity to the experience of dying. We have a monumental opportunity in front of us, before one of the few universal issues as individuals as well as the civil society, to rethink and redesign how it is we die. So let's begin at the end. For most people, the scariest thing about death isn't being death. It's dying, suffering. It's a key distinction. To get underneath this, it can be very helpful to tease out suffering which is necessary as it is. From suffering we can change. The former is a natural, essential part of life, part of the deal. And to this we are called to make space, adjust, grow. It can be really good to realize forces larger than ourselves. They bring proportionality, like a cosmic right sizing. Every time my lights were gone, that loss, for example, became fact, fixed necessity, part of my life, and I learned that I could no more reject this fact than reject myself. It took me a while, but I learned it eventually. Now, another great thing about necessary suffering is that it is the very thing that unites caregiver and care receiver, human beings. This, we are finally realizing, is where healing happens. Yes, compassion, literally, as we learned yesterday, suffering together. Now on the system side, on the other hand, so much of the suffering is unnecessary, invented. It serves no good purpose. But the good news is, since the brand of suffering is made up, well, we can change it. How we die is indeed something we can affect. Making the system sensitive to this fundamental distinction between necessary and unnecessary suffering gives us our first three design cues for the day. After all, our role as caregivers, as people who care, is to relieve suffering, not add to the pile. True to the tenets of palliative care, I function as something of a reflective advocate, as much as prescribing physician. Quick aside, palliative care, a very important field but poorly understood. While it includes, it is not limited to the end of life care. It is not limited to hospice. It's simply about comfort and living well at any stage. So please know that you don't have to be dying anytime soon to benefit from palliative care. Now, let me introduce you to Frank. Sort of makes this point. I've been seeing Frank now for years. He's living with advancing prostate cancer on top of long-standing HIV. We work on his bone pain and his fatigue, but most of the time we spend thinking out loud together about his life. Really, about our lives. In this way, Frank grieves. In this way, he keeps up with his laws as they roll in. So that is really to take it the next moment. Loss is one thing, but regret quite another. Frank has always been an adventurer. He looks like something out of a Norman Rockwell painting, and no fan of regret. So it wasn't surprising when he came into clinic one day, saying he wanted to raft down the Colorado River. Was this a good idea? With all the risks to his safety and his health. Some would say no. Mandy did, but he went for it, while he still could. It was a glorious, marvelous trip. Freezing water, blistering, dry heat, scorpion snakes, wildlife howling of the threatening walls of the Grand Canyon. All the glorious side of the world beyond our control. Frank's decision, while maybe dramatic, is exactly the kind so many of us will make, if we only had the support to figure out what is best for ourselves over time. So among much of what we are talking about today is a shift in perspective. After my accident, when I went back to college, I changed my major to arts history. Studying visual art, I figured I'd learn something about how to see. A very important lesson for a kid who couldn't change so much of what he was seeing. Perspective, that kind of art to me, we humans get to play with, turning anguish into a flower. Flash of a word. Now I work at an amazing place in San Francisco called the Zen Hospice Project, where we have a little ritual that helps with this shift perspective. When one of our residents dies, the mortuary men come, and as we are wheeling about the outdoor garden, heading for the gate, we pause. Anyone who wants, fellow residents, family, nurses, volunteers, the hearse drivers, too, now shares the story of a strong of silence as we sprinkle the body with flower petals. It takes a few minutes. It's a sweet, simple parting image to usher in grief with warmth rather than repugnance. Contrast that with the typical experience in a hospital setting, much like this. Brooded broadly room-lined with tubes and beeping machines and blinking lights that don't stop even when the patient's life passes. Cleaning crew swoops in, the body whisked away, and it all feels as though that person has never really existed. Well intended, of course, in a name of sterility, but hospitals tend to assault our senses, and the most we might hope for within those walls is novelist, anesthetic, literally the opposite of aesthetic. I revere hospitals for what they can do. I'm alive because of that. But we ask too much of our hospitals. They are places for acute trauma and treatable illness. They are no place to live and die. That's not what they were designed for. Now mind you, I'm not giving up on the notion that our institutions can become more humane. Beauty can be found anywhere. I spent a few months in a burn unit at St. Barnabas Hospitals in Livingstone, New Jersey, where I got really great care at every turn, including good palliative care for my pet. And one night, it began to snow outside. I remember my nurse complaining about driving through it, and there was no window in my room. But it was great to just imagine it coming down all sticky. Next day, one of my nurses smuggled in a snowball for me. She brought it into the unit. I cannot tell you the rapture I felt holding that in my hand. And the cotton is dripping onto my burning skin. The miracle of it all, the fascination as I watched it melt and turn to water. In that moment, just being any part of this planet in this universe mattered more to me than whether I live or die. That little snowball pecked at as inspiration I needed to both try to live and be okay if I did not. In a hospital, there's a stolen moment. In my work over the years, I've known many people who were ready to go, ready to die. Not because they had found some final peace or transcendence, but because they were so repulsed by what they lived had become. In a world cut off or ugly, there are already record numbers of us living with chronic and terminal illness and into ever older age, and we are nowhere near ready or prepared for this silver tsunami. We need an infrastructure dynamic enough to handle this seismic shift in our population. Now is the time to create something new, something better. I know we can because we have to. The alternative is just unacceptable, and the key ingredients are no policy, education, and training, systems, bricks and mortar. We have tons of input for designers of all stripes to work with. We know, for example, from research what's most important to people who are closer to death. comforter, feeling unburdened and unburdening to those they love, existential peace, and a sense of wonderment and spirituality. Over Zen has passed near 30 years, we've learned much more from our residents in subtle detail. Little things aren't so little. Take Janet. She finds it harder to breathe one day to the next due to ALS. Well, guess what? She wants to start smoking again, and fresh cigars, if you please, not out of some self-destructive bent, but to feel her lungs fill while she has them. Priorities change. Oh, Kate. She just wants to know her dog Austin is lying at the roof of her bed, his coat muzzle against her dry skin, instead of more chemotherapy coursing through her veins. She's done that sensuous, aesthetic gratification where in a moment, in an instant, we are rewarded for just being. So much of it comes down to loving our time by ways of the senses, by way of our body, of everything doing the living and the dying. Probably the most poignant room in the Zen husband's guest house is our kitchen, which is a little strange when you realize that so many of residents can eat very little, if anything at all. But we realize we are providing sustenance on several levels, a smell, a symbolic plan. Seriously, with all the heavy duty stuff happening under our roof. One of the most tried and true interventions we know of is to bake cookies. As long as we have our senses, even just one, we have at least the possibilities of assessing what makes us feel human, connected. Imagine the ripples of these notions from the millions of people living and dying with dementia. Primosensorial delights that say the things we don't have words for, impulse that make us stay present. No need for a past or future. So if teasing unnecessary suffering out of the system was our first design cue, attending to dignity by way of the sense, by way of the body, the aesthetic realm is design cue number 2. Now this gets us quickly to the third and final bit for today. Namely, we need to lift our sights to set our sights on well-being so that life and healthcare can become about making life more wonderful, rather than just desirable, beneficent. Here, this gets light at the distinction between a disease center and the patient or human-centered models of care. And there is where caring becomes a creative, generative, even playful act. Play may sound like the funny word here, but it is also one of our highest forms of adaptation. Consider every major compulsory effort it takes to be human. The need for food has birthed cuisine. The need for shelter has given rise to architecture. The need for conversation and for being subjected to the clock. Well, we invented music. So science science is a necessary part of life. What might we create with this book? By playing. I am in no way suggesting we take a light approach to dying, or that we meditate any particular way of dying. There are mountains of sorrow that cannot move, and one way or another, we will all kneel there. Rather, I am asking that we make space, physical room to allow life to play itself at the way out. So that rather than just getting out of the way, aging and dying can become a process of crescendo to the end. We can solve for death. I know some of you are working on this. So meanwhile, we can decide towards it. Parts of me died early on, and that's something we can all say one way or another. I got to redesign my life around this fact, and tell you it has been a liberation to realize you can always find the shock of beauty or meaning in what life you have led, like a snowball lasting for a perfect moment, and while melting away if we love such moments ferociously, then maybe we can learn to live well, not in spite of death, but not because of it. Let death be what takes us, not lack of imagination. Thank you. Applause. And Eden, my number is S034108, and my label is Junior. Thank you for your listening. Goodbye.